very strong military industry.
Sure.
Because a strong military industry also ensures that when you meet with other nations, you can speak. A strong country that can defend itself does not need to agitate. Mm. It does not need to sneak into other people's because it believes in itself. So our weakness has been that even though we have very brave young men and women, we have not actually looked well after them for decades. It is important for us to do that because unless militarily you can protect yourselves, even the weakest of countries will take advantage of you. In the past, you needed cannons and whatever, big guns. This year, you know that you need IT. You can wreak havoc in any country. So I would say that one of the things that we need to do is to really relook at the resources we put, leadership, renewal, preparations. We would want to look at how we look after our borders. We have come up with the BMA. We think it's the solve all. The military is responsible to ensure that your country remains sovereign. Not BMA. The integrity of your country rests with the military. The constitution of the country is protected by the military. Now, if you don't have the power to protect yourself, to deter any interference with your economy and with your political sovereignty, you are weak. So we need to do something about that.
The situation in the DRC has also been something that maybe hasn't made as many headlines as some other global conflicts, but it's something where South Africa has been involved for a very long time, even going back into the Mbeki administration.
Mandela.
Right, even towards the end of Mandela. What are your thoughts on the situation, particularly in the eastern part of DRC and the role that South Africa should be playing there?
Well, we went there in Mandela's time. We are still there. What we thought, some of us, was that we should, in the meantime, be helping the DRC to look after its own territories. In the very South African way, we thought, but start off by talking amongst yourselves. Start off by bringing in the regional players. What's the role of Uganda? What's the role of Rwanda? What's the role of Burundi? How do we diffuse this? The resources that the DRC has are a magnet to all the other players out there, not to want this particular country to have peace amongst itself.
Sure.
Because for as long as they are at each other's heads and throats, they can continue to steal the wealth of the Rwandese, the Congolese people. So we agreed with President Ramaphosa that whilst we are still there, whilst we feel we are obliged to continue being there, at least the talks amongst the people of the DRC must start. At least the neighbors must be involved. Because sometimes what is happening there is influence from outside this continent. The funds come from outside the continent. Just before the elections, what we were seeing was even the people who were hitting the DRC, that they were not Congolese. Your mercenaries were so well armed with sophisticated weapons that the Congolese could not withstand. So, because in the world mostly defense ministers talk, and they talk very directly, and we began to have a conversation with our counterparts. Guy, we know what your country is doing. We know who you are funding. But the people who are dying are not just those soldiers. It's women, children, and people who are aged. Stop it. So we would say that, of course, we want our kids back. We want our children back. But we were made to stay there. Do we pull out now? No, we don't. But at least I do know that President Ramaphosa has begun this talks to try and foster peace amongst themselves. We have offered training militarily when they have made peace. We know that if they are allowed to have that peace, if they come together, the DRC will be one of the biggest economies in this continent. But until they do so, this conflict affects all of us.
You have such an interesting career in that you've served in cabinet, but you've also been a leader of the legislative arm of government as well. What were some of the, or what was the biggest challenge in leading Parliament, in being